CBR is a garbage website filled with mostly garbage articles written by mostly garbage people, which, I think, is not exactly news to anyone who's been paying attention the last few years at least. Comic Book Resources has continuously had bad take after bad take after bad take, usually along the lines of the SJW and woke slant. For instance, back in 2017, they wrote this article blaming what they deem online trolls for the removal of Aubrey Sitterson from the G.I. Joe books. In particular, it blamed Richard C. Meyer, who, at the time, was going under the Twitter and YouTube handle Diversity and Comics, for Sitterson's subsequent removal from the G.I. Joe comics. Even after they spoke with the CEO of IDW at the time, who stated unequivocally several times that Aubrey Sitterson's book was cancelled due to low sales numbers. This, of course, would be the same Aubrey Sitterson who decided to denigrate 9/11 and the literally thousands of people affected by the attack personally, as well as denigrating the effect that it had on the country as a whole. In another instance, they decided to virtue signal by writing a hit piece against the anime Rising of the Shield Hero by stating that it was sexist and promotes slavery, as well as calling it all around bad, basically for the aforementioned reasons. It doesn't really explain what's bad about the anime aside from these dumbass reasons, though. Now, viewing a form of entertainment as good or bad is rather subjective, and that's fine, but when you're denigrating an entire work based on straw man arguments, it just amounts to a terrible take. I mean, just stating that the false accusations of rape that the main character of the anime goes through was played for laughs was just a whole nother level of window-licking density that shows these motherfuckers are very much in need of the yellow helmets they so obviously sport. This point was played entirely seriously. Any laughter which resulted from the plot point was done at the expense of the bitch who leveled such a horrid and utterly false accusation at the hero in the first place. Much like how everyone is currently laughing at the possible plight of a certain Aquaman starlet. A more recent example of CBR being full of woke waste is this article about the manga called Tomie. You can probably glean from the headline and subheader there what this article is actually going to say, but I'll go ahead and tell you a bit about this one. The article is also full of virtue signaling fuckery, talking about how the manga showcases the sexism and misogyny of men embodied within the very form of Tomie, and how she often ends up being ended at the hands of her male victims. While this article wants to spin the character of Tomie as some sort of stand-in for the tragic circumstances of women in a patriarchal society, this narrative does not tell the whole tale of Tomie, and instead cherry-picks certain aspects to highlight its own bias. In the manga, Tomie is a literal monster who uses her own supernatural abilities to drive men and women into psychoses, which results in people brutally killing each other, themselves, or her. When she is killed, she is capable of regenerating herself, through cannibalism by the way, and even has other Tomie clones regenerating from pieces of her body. While certain themes could certainly be gleaned from the stories themselves, obviously. Again, art is very much subjective. This entire narrative of this article is disingenuous at best and an abject lie at worst. While the writer certainly lays some of the blame at the feet of Tomie through her narcissism, she ultimately states that the consequences of Tomie's own manipulations of her targets are evidence of some sort of exposure of male entitlement and objectification, when her endings are entirely on her. She deliberately drives her victims to insanity in order to achieve specific outcomes. Her regenerative abilities are again even fueled by cannibalism. She's a monster that this author has deliberately cast as some sort of victim, a face of the plight of whammons the world over. Any of this sound familiar to you? However, none of these are the main focus of the video tonight. Sorry y'all, I got a little sidetracked coming up with reasons why CBR is such a trash site. So hey there, I am the Goblin King, and now I'm going to go through this amazing article from CBR that I found floating around on the TwitTwat app. As usual, this would be another disingenuous article talking about the new She-Hulk series coming to Disney+. Right out of the gate, this article comes out swinging that misogynist bat against fans due to their valid criticisms, stating unequivocally within the very first paragraph that there are people bashing the show solely because it focuses on a female superhero. Now, while the article does state some of the more valid criticisms that I've personally seen about the show, namely its trash CGI, the article then goes on to state that misogynist comments have also surfaced. Of course, they don't provide any receipts showcasing any of these many misogynistic comments. Now, keep in mind that I'm not going to decisively state that these types of commentary haven't come out across the length and breadth of the internet, but they are most likely a small minority amongst the thousands of critical comments the trailer for the show has received. As I said, the vast majority of the ones that I saw personally involved the dogshit CGI that they were using for She-Hulk herself. While there were some that panned the tone of the show, specifically that scene where She-Hulk was carrying that dude like a princess, the vast majority of them were, again, mostly panning the CGI. And some of the memes were glorious. The point being that this whole narrative that this trash site and specifically this author is trying to push about She-Hulk getting flack, specifically because it's a female-led superhero show or film, is just complete and utter bullshit. Most of the people who were longtime fans of the MCU, at least until recently, were longtime fans of the comic books that the franchise was built off of. Those fans know that She-Hulk has been in the comics since the 80s. Those fans were also most likely at least casual fans of the superhero herself for the last 4 decades. Again, at least until recent years when She-Hulk basically became a legit clone of her cousin Bruce because of something stupid about the male gaze or something like that. Which leads me to the fact that some of these complaints that this article is showcasing is coming from the woke idiot side of the fence, where people are bitching about how the show's She-Hulk isn't as muscular as she should be. That's a recent development, morons, and from what I understand, the show is based on her classic designs. Get a clue, read a comic, shut the fuck up. The other rather valid argument that this article is stepping over and calling misogynist is the idea that the MCU in general, which is partly embodied by this show specifically, is that the entire franchise is currently pandering to the left, which most of the entertainment sphere has been doing for years now, if not decades. Specifically, a fringe element of the far left which cares only about the color of a person's skin and what equipment they have between their thighs or their bedroom activities. Or all 3 at the same time. This idea of the MCU isn't exactly a new or novel concept. For years now, especially since the end of Phase 4 and Endgame, longtime fans of the franchise have noticed this gradual, then full throttle shift into identity politics. This shift is embodied in Captain Marvel, that cringy-ass scene in Endgame with all the female heroes being girl bosses, WandaVision, the Eternals, Falcon and Winter Soldier, Hawkeye, Loki, Moon Knight, Miss Marvel, etc., etc. Even in the more recent Doctor Strange movie. All of these properties found ways to denigrate or belittle the characters that their individual properties are based upon, and often bring to the forefront lesser-known and lesser-liked female counterparts from the all-new, all-different Marvel line of books, all of which invariably flopped, by the way. Loki being shown up and denigrated by every female character in his show is a good example. Hawkeye being shown up by his much better female counterpart in Kate Bishop, Moon Knight again being led around by another more capable woman, are all fine examples. While in general a She-Hulk show or movie would be welcomed by most fans, this does indeed feel like more of the same bullshit nonsense. Now, to push its bullshit narrative, this article and this author step over all of the criticisms that the other shows and movies in the MCU vein headed up by men have been receiving as well. Many and voluminous were the criticisms heaped upon Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and Moon Knight for instance. People have a lot of valid criticisms of the Doctor Strange movie as well. Now, I don't know how close the Morbius movie hits to the MCU itself, but that movie has been panned across the interwebs for its bullshit writing and laughable characterizations. Inconvenient truth that this author chooses to step over because it doesn't fit her chosen narrative. Very few, if any, fans actually hated on this trailer because it sports a female lead. I've personally liked She-Hulk for decades, and if I wasn't boycotting anything and everything Disney for many reasons, including the aforementioned reasons, I'd actually have been interested in watching it. Then I saw the trailer, and it just looks awful. For anyone out there who'd go, "You can't judge something by the trailer, you have to watch it first." Nah, bitch, that's the whole purpose of a trailer. It's supposed to sell the product to you by making it look good. Like the trailer for The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, for instance. That made that objectively terrible movie look awesome. And it wasn't. It was fucking awful, as I said. The She-Hulk trailer made that show look like dog shit. If it's good, more power to it. I would love for a good rendition of She-Hulk to happen. Again, I've liked her for decades, but that trailer isn't selling me a good She-Hulk TV show. That trailer is showing me something that looks bad. If you like it, fine, but don't sit there and try to, once again, paint an entire fandom or section of a fandom as something it's not. Which is why I state unequivocally that this site, this article, and this author are all fucking garbage. So, that's all we have for today, folks. As always, these are just my personal thoughts and opinions. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in that handy section down below. And while you're down there, if you smell garbage, that's just CBR. I hope everyone has had a happy Memorial Day and remembers all the people that gave everything they have so that we can enjoy this day and so that I could sit here and bitch about stupid pop culture nonsense. We thank you all. If you've made it this far into the video, I thank you as well. I'll see you all tomorrow for some more pop culture garbage smells. See you then. Lates.